Hello, Drunk Theology fans. Good to be here with you this afternoon. It is a lovely September, almost fall afternoon here in the city of Long Beach. And I'm back with you here today to go over and complete our little exploration of changing our perspective when studying the Ten Commandments. Now, for those of you who are new, please, feel free to subscribe down below and hit the bell to get reminders of any time that we are posting any new episodes. And also, if you are watching this on Instagram, please go to my bio. From there, you'll see a Linktree Link that will take you to all the podcast platforms that my program is on, and other video platforms that this video is on. So please feel free to do that and let your friends know about Drunk Theology. And we're going to have a great time just going through this series. Got some exciting things coming up, and so be watching out later this week to stay tuned in, because we got some great things coming out, some new things that are coming out on Patreon that you'll be seeing here toward the end of the week. So anyway, let's get on with our lesson today. Now, if you remember, we left off at the seventh commandment, and we are done with that. And a lot of you say, whew, okay. I hope you say okay, and I hope that you've made corrections in the way that you're going. But let's continue on. Now, the eighth commandment is one that pretty much I think everyone kind of agrees with. I think everyone more or less says, yeah, I get it, and this is wrong. And that is, you shall not steal. You shall not steal. So that is the command that is given. It says that, you don't take what doesn't belong to you. I think everybody more or less agrees with that. That's something that we understand. Even children that play will be that way. They'll simply know, hey, that's my toy, right? I mean, you see it especially with 2 and 3 and 4 year olds, maybe even older than that. That's not yours, it's mine. We have this idea of possession, that we know that this belongs to us. But it goes, I think, a little deeper than that with the concept of stealing. I love C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis in his book, it's such a small book, and if you have never read it, I encourage you to get it. It doesn't take that long to read. It's called Mere Christianity. And he gives an example of just the concept of everyone knows what's right and wrong. And he gives a little illustration. I probably have shared it 100 times, and you'll probably hear me share it on this channel several times, just because it's so simple and yet so pointed, at what is true. And that is, he gives the example of you're on a bus, and a little old lady is standing there, or sitting down, and at one of those stops, all of a sudden she drops her purse. She stands up to pick up her purse, and someone takes her seat. Everyone agrees that's wrong. What's wrong with you? Give the woman back her seat. There's something we know right and wrong. It's something innate within us. So we kind of agree with this one easily. The other ones, yeah, you could see, with the adultery issue and fornication issue, you could, try to reason out, well, I'm just a human being, and I have these drives, we could, and I couldn't help myself, and I did these things. You could say, well, you don't understand my parents, my mother and my father were a bunch of jerks, and how can I honor them? And we can look at all the other commands and make excuses for them. We can easily excuse them away with our human experience. But this one about stealing is kind of tough. There's only one excuse, I would say, and that's because the person's hungry. And it's because they're trying to preserve life. And that's really is almost all the commandments really are about. It's about preserving life. so that the commands are written for man, not man for the commandments. Um, but I think everyone kind of agrees with the stealing thing. But I don't think that we all look at it the same way on different levels. Let me give you an example. You know, what's something that you could steal that you think that no one would notice, no one would care? Well, you might say that, well, not that anybody uses postage stamps anymore, but I remember there was a time that in my life I worked in an office and they had a postage meter, and it was a rather large office, and people would just run the postage for the office. We would send literally hundreds of letters out every day, and different employees would have access to it. And I remember there were times they would say, "Oh, just here, go ahead and throw your personal mail in there." And you're thinking, well, yeah, it's just one or two bills, not a big deal. But you know what? You're stealing. That, well, I don't know how much it was then, 21 cents. It didn't belong to you. It belonged to the company. And it's wrong. And what's funny is that there's actually, because it is a meter, there were at that time people in the post office that kept an eye out for what appeared to be personal mail going through the whole postal system that was metered, and they would actually contact those people that owned those meters, or rented those meters. And so yeah, every once in a while we would get reprimanded in our office. And then, of course, there was someone who would tell on, well, I saw so-and-so, and all of a sudden, so-and-so was in there. I would remember having one of those conversations with my boss and never had it again. Because, you're stealing. But something else you could steal. Time. Time is something that people steal all the time. Even right there, I just stole it. Anyway, no, but time. Does your time belong to you, or does it belong to someone else? See, we tend to think time belongs to us. But if you're working it for an hourly job or even a salaried job, your time is not your own. Your time belongs to whoever it is that is paying you. So if you're just kind of just sloughing off, and my wife and I have had these conversations, because every year, because she's in retail, and every year there's an influx of employees that come in during the seasonal times, because they need extra hands. And she says some of them, they're interested in getting a permanent job, and you can tell because they hustle. Others, they're just there to make some extra Christmas cash, and they'll work. Then there's others that they're there to get some extra cash, but they don't want to work. And literally they're stealing. And then they wonder why they don't get hired at the end of the season. And it's because you've been stealing all this time. And so time is something that we can steal. Sometimes we can steal time from our own selves. What about your time? Do you schedule out your time? That's one thing that some people struggle with, some people don't. I tend to go through periods where I'm excellent with time and I schedule it out, and I'm like a clock, and then I'll go through periods of time where I'm like, okay, I'll schedule this time, but something else came up, somebody wanted to go play a round of golf, or I think I'm going to go out for a bike ride today. It's just a beautiful morning, and all of a sudden you start stealing time, and then you find yourself at the end of the day frantic because you haven't got this done or that done. And you've stolen time, even if you stole it from yourself. Because you're really, when you steal from yourself, you're stealing the benefit that you can give to others as a result of what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So time is something you could steal. But I think when we look strictly at the commandment, those are concepts that, the reason I bring them up is because they're the small fox that spoil the vine. They're the small little fox that can change things. Yeah, you can get away with stealing your own time. No one's not, I'm not saying that that's an impossibility. But when you look at the fact that it's a mindset and it can creep into other things, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about your state of mind, your state of being, the consciousness in which you live, which is another interesting concept alone in and of itself, consciousness and what is it. But the thing is your mindset determines that. Is this okay? Is that okay? And while a postage stamp and a meter, okay, big deal. Okay, I robbed myself of some time, or maybe I stayed at the water cooler a little longer than I should have at work. We can excuse those away, and your employers and even yourself could excuse things away, and you're like, okay, that's cool, whatever. But it's the mindset. If you don't keep it in check, that can take you down a wrong road. Especially if you get into a situation where maybe stealing is going to benefit you, or at least you believe it's going to benefit you in a great way. And now you've set yourself up to be something you thought you never were. And believe me, people don't know what they're capable of until their back is up against a wall. And the instincts of old, the those that are rooted deep within your psyche, those that are rooted deep within humanity, begin to take place, and they begin to come out. And you don't know what you're capable of. You think that you're independent, but put yourself in a group and maybe find out that you're not so independent, that you'll go along with the Nazi march. I think, you never know until you get there. And so you have to be careful of yourself. Look at yourself. That's why Paul said, don't compare yourself among yourselves. That's a big mistake. Well, I'm better than they are, or I do a better job than they do, or I'm of more value than they are to this company. Don't compare yourself with yourselves. Tend to yourself. And that's a hard thing to do, because we qualify ourselves by comparing ourselves to others, and we need to be careful of that. The other thing to look at is the next commandment. It says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So, that's an interesting command. You shall not bear false witness. A lot of people look at that and say, well, that means you don't lie. Well, yeah, in its simplest form, sure. I have no problem with that. You shouldn't lie. It's not a good thing to lie. It's not a good thing to lie. But that's not what the command is strictly about. It's a little deeper than that. Because it says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. One area would be, people look at as, for example, gossiping. That's true. Not a good thing to gossip. Gossip is not a godly behavior, for sure. But, we all can't help it. We love to talk about the dress that woman was wearing, or did you see the guy's tooth? We love just talking. I think it goes a little deeper than that. That, again, setting up mindset. What's the mindset? What's causing this to happen? Maybe that's why you're gossiping, because you have a propensity to bear false witness. Say, well, if it's not lying, what is it? Lying is sin. Could be. Well, Jesus said Satan's the father of lies. Yeah, yep. You're right. But lying is permitted. Think about it. Look at the story of Abraham. The story of Abraham, twice he lies to a king and says, "Oh yeah, this woman. Oh yeah, I know she's really beautiful, isn't she? No, 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 no. She's not my wife. Are you kidding? I mean, look at me. I could never garner the attention of such a beautiful young lady. No, no, this is my sister." Putting his wife, Sarah, in danger because she winds up having to go with the king. And the king has plans to make her part of the harem. And he does it because he's afraid for his life. And what's interesting is that God doesn't rebuke Abraham, he rebukes the king. God comes down and threatens the king to destroy not only him and his house, but his entire kingdom. All because Abraham lied. So obviously there are exceptions to the rule. And maybe this command isn't necessarily addressing that. Another good example would be Rahab the harlot in the town of Jericho. The Hebrew spies are coming in to spy out the land to see if it's like what God promised, yet they can take this city. That they're and two of the spies go in there, and they almost get caught, and they wind up hiding in the house of this harlot, a house of a prostitute, okay, of a hoe, a woman with a dark reputation, I mean, this isn't like a saint. And she hides them, tells the soldiers of her city they went over that way. And she hid them, and then she lets them down by a rope later on when the coast was clear. And she said, "Make me this one promise, that you won't destroy me and my family when God gives you this city." And that's where the scarlet thread comes in, and she hung this scarlet thread, it really is more like a rope, from her window, and everybody knew that house is saved. Red being symbolic of the blood of the Lamb. And so here, God saves a woman, a prostitute of all things, saves her and her children and her house because she lied. She was blessed because she lied. Oh, by the way, Abraham with the king blessed him and gave him a bunch of money and a bunch of cattle and all sorts of stuff. Why? Because he lied. So, okay, so obviously then that means that this command there's deeper meaning to it. And what it all comes down to is, remember, we're talking about here in these, the first three commands, or first four commands have to do with our relationship with God. The fifth command has to do with our relationship with our parents, and the rest has to do with our relationship with society. And so here it says, "You shall not bear false witness against them." The reason you would bear false witness, this is talking about a legal procedure, that you would not come against a neighbor and lie about their situation because you are going to gain financially because of it. That there you have a financial interest. You have some kind of fiduciary interest in lying. You are going to benefit from this because you're going to lie about them, and you're going to make them out to be a skank or a criminal or a thief or some kind of, God hater or whatever you're going to do so that you can get and benefit from them. Maybe take their land, maybe take their house, which then brings us to the next command. And the next command, plainly says this: "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. You see, because coveting leads you to break up all these other commands. It causes you to bear false witness. It causes you to commit adultery. It causes you to steal. It causes you to maybe even kill. I mean, coveting is one of the worst sins there is, because it sets up a pattern, it sets up a mindset that will allow you to do evil given the right situation. See, people think, well, I could never do evil. You know what? I think there are a lot of people that have been involved in some form of social work or social betterment or even religious work, volunteerism, that never thought that they would harm an elderly person, that they never thought that they would try to manipulate and steal from an elderly person, or who never thought that they would molest or take advantage of a younger boy or girl. It never entered their mind. It really wasn't part of their family. I mean, there are predators that go into those fields for that intended purpose, but there are others that get caught up. And given the right circumstance, you see what it is. It's the mindset that you have. That's why Paul talks about the renewing of your mind, allowing the Spirit of God to renew your mind. And this renewing is a continual renewing, because the truth is yeah, you can get born again and saved and filled with the Holy Spirit and read the Word and get into church and all that. But eventually you're gonna digress. You're gonna go through ebbs and flows of zealousness and being kicked back and laid back. And if at the very root of it you don't have the right mindset, you are opening yourself up to any of these. It says, do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet his wife, his male servant, his ox, or his, which would be anything of monetary value. Oxes were, of monetary value to them. It brought forth life. It brought forth, food. The donkey, the beast of burden. I mean, you could say that's your pickup truck. It says you don't go a hankering, as heard this one country guy said, hankering for your neighbor's stuff either. You don't do that. You just don't. Coveting. That's why Paul says twice in the New Testament, in 2 of his letters, he says that coveting is idolatry. That's interesting, because it starts out, love the Lord your God, and you shall not have any other gods before me. I am Yahweh, and you shall not have any other gods before me. Starts out with that. Then it ends, the 10th commandment, with coveting. And Paul's saying it's the same as idolatry. Why? How is that possible? Because you're looking to whatever it is that you're coveting to give you fulfillment, to give you joy, to give you peace, to give you everything you've ever wanted. It's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for in that other woman. That's what you're looking for in that other man. That's what you're looking for in those diamonds and the ox. And it's what you're looking for in the donkey, the new sports car. It's what you're looking for in the female servant, the male servant. You're looking for satisfaction. And only God can give that. That's why Jesus said, Shalom I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. And of course our English translation says peace. But that's such a shallow word in our language compared to what is meant by shalom. Because shalom is not merely the cessation from anger and war or violence, but it also has to do with well-being and health and peace inside of who you are, so that everything could be falling apart, but you still have shalom, because it goes deeper. And that's really what it is. It's returning back to the Garden of Eden, to that paradise where everything is taken care of, everything is met. You just have your responsibility of tending the garden, of making everything is growing properly. And that's really what we all want. We just want to make sure that we're growing properly, that our children are growing properly, that our family and friends are growing in a proper manner, where we're able to interact with one another in that brotherly love. And that's the ultimate goal. That's what Jesus came to die for. Jesus came for that intended purpose, to bring you back to the Father, to bring you back to the beginning, to bring you to that place of knowing Him, of knowing your Creator, and letting Him fill you with that peace and that love and that care, so that you can give it to others. That's really the intent of the commandments. Have no other God before you. Let nothing else, covet nothing to replace what God is or should be to you. And it's so easy. It's so easy, especially in our consumer society. You know, I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing wrong with things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with things. It's when the things replace God that's the problem. When you look to it to be your peace and satisfaction. Well, I hope that this helps your understanding of the commands and how that they operate in our lives. That first and foremost, no other God. Secondly, that we hold His name precious, sacred, holy, cherish it. That we do not take His name in vain and use it to manipulate others with. That we honor Him and honor the Sabbath day and have a time alone with Him. Have a time that's just between you and Him. It may be in a, well, obviously not right now, but it may be in a congregation format. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. That's probably the best. Because we need each other. A community of faith strengthens each other. And then, your right relationship with your parents. They're not perfect, but honor them. There is a right place. And then you're able to fulfill the rest of the commands. Jesus put it very simply. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And love your neighbor like you would love yourself. And this fulfills the law and the prophets. It's all fulfilled in that. This breakdown just shows you maybe an area that you need to strengthen, maybe a part of your mind that you need to allow the Holy Spirit to renew. But my prayer is that that you will allow him to renew you, because it's in that renewing that you'll have peace. God bless you, and we will touch base again here next week. Keep safe. Shalom.